Hello, everybody. My name is Dwayne Sr. I want to welcome you to Tree Actions,
Yeah.
a new podcast that was inspired by what I like to call the human forest and our experience in this business of arboriculture and sharing our experience, strength, and hope as it relates to working in the tree care industry and how it's impacted and affected not only our professional lives, but our personal lives. And joining me on this adventure is Mr. Tony Treshold.
Hello, all. Yeah, that's a good way to sum it up. I kind of think of it as an opportunity to kind of connect,
Yes.
future to past with the present in between, because tree work and arboriculture has always been much more lifestyle, not job for me and for many of the people that we know. So it has had those far-reaching effects, and that term human forestry that you've been using here recently, it kind of sums it up well. We all are sort of like a forest, trees come and go. New trees are added, old trees leave, they all serve different purposes. They grow, they change, everything kind of changes, and it's kind of neat. And I think one of the things I see, having been in this business for 3 decades now, I notice, in the last 2 to 3 years, there's a disconnect between the younger people getting into the business and the history that came before them. And from a trainer, sometimes it's frustrating because it's like, can you just not do that because we've been down this road before and people got hurt. But they're like, well, why? Well, it's like, because we tried this shit before and it didn't work. So my hope is that, and a lot of that history, a lot of those lessons are shared just like this, in a format just like this, just telling stories, and relating to each other and talking about those times. Not that we should dwell on the past or be some sort of historical archive, but the things that have gone before us shouldn't be left behind, and should be passed on. What's the old saying? You're not truly gone until nobody speaks your name ever again, so in many ways we can keep a lot of the trees that have fallen down and are turning back into, food for the rest of the forest that are no longer with us.
Exactly. And the recent event, Climariza, that whole concept was inspired by the way trees connect with organisms in the soil, specifically in this case, fungi, and how those roots are, trees are able to get nutrients, minerals, micronutrients from these associations that are unique to each fungus and unique to those specific nutrients. And, how much like that are we not all, in that all of our experiences, bring learnings and that we can share with one another if we connect, and that's exactly, and specifically, within the training model or the world that we've been a part of, Tony, you and I both for many years, basically our whole careers. Certainly for me, it's been my whole career, and being one of the founders of Arborculture Canada. I wanted a way to connect, my instructors, my new instructors, my new growth with the old growth. And we have some part of our force that has fallen, and they are very much still contributing. Their presence is felt. There is a hole in the canopy, but they weren't just bucked up, chipped, and hauled away. They're still serving a big purpose there as part of the forest floor and nurturing and helping the rest of us. So, yeah, just a way through conversations to connect and share experiences, knowledge. And like you said, more than just an occupation for so many of us, certainly those that we connect with on a long-term basis. I remember Larry Hall, Norm's father. He's passed away now, but he was in that Legends of Arboriculture video. And, he talks in there. He actually does kind of the closing piece on that one section. And he says, he thinks that something mystical happens with people that have been in the tree care industry for a certain length of time. And he goes so far as to say he feels it may be imparted mystically by the trees. But, whatever it is, I was interviewed in Washington, D.C. at the International Tree Climbing Championships. And for some reason, I had it in my brain at that time about how kind of tree people are like the last vestiges of where if there was druids left on this planet practicing, you'd find them at the tree competitions. Like this is where you're going to find all the. Well, that was a bit of a thing to say to a radio interview person, because guess what got put on the radio in Washington D.C. And there was a few people that were like, seriously, Dwayne, you had to tell. You told the whole Washington D.C. area on live radio or it was broadcast more than once because the recording played a few times. The Druids are gathering. It's like, not everyone agreed with being identified as a Druid, and it wasn't my intention specifically for that to be the primary focus of the conversation. But like as things go, and the same could be done, held for this podcast. What people hear and take away from it, and I would just like to offer that. What you hear here, let it be, taken in, and what you find valuable, take and share it and use it. And what you don't, maybe you just don't understand it, or, throw it away or file it away. That's up to you. But really, it's the intention here is just to share and talk and stimulate, conversation, stimulate thought, and help and improve each other through that interaction. I think it's fundamentally a goal of it, and to keep the connections alive. In today's day and age, it seems that the audio word is as powerful or as common as the written word. And, for someone like myself, I really enjoy, I can listen to a book. I can listen to people talk for hours and not get distracted or bored. But, videos work too, but there's something about the spoken word and having that, the meditative quality of driving combined with listening to something that sounds interesting has a real powerful effect, at least for me. And maybe that this can be for some people as well.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think that, a podcast like this was in the back of our minds for quite a while. We just didn't know the medium to, to make it effective. Cause we can get together in person and we can tell stories, but the forest, the human forest has got so big, even just in Arborcanada, they're spread all over the country, and it's difficult to have those sit downs face to face. And then you throw in, pandemics and things, and it makes it even more interesting. But, I think, we kind of accidentally stumbled into this podcast format, and it worked. Like I said, I agree with you. It works really well. It's very consumable. It's the kind of thing that, you can listen to when you're driving or, cooking or whatever, and you can break it into pieces. It's not, I love reading. I read a lot of books, but, there is a different quality to an audio book.
Yeah.
Hearing a discussion too, because, a book will never get a discussion across quite the same, because you don't have the pauses, and you don't have the inflections, and you don't have the little laughs in the background and those things. So, this audio format is really, really good for that. And I think by trying to add the video to it, I don't think it would add anything to it.
Yeah.
I think it would just make it harder to consume, because you'd have, okay, now I got to sit down and listen to Dwayne and Tony talk for an hour. It's like, no, you can listen to us for 10 minutes and then you can, go in the backyard, play ball with your kids. And when you come in, you can listen, it's much more digestible. And I think it serves the tradition of those stories, that storytelling tradition, so well, because it is the human voice, it is the spoken voice, and there's different, it serves that power of story so well. So I look forward to making that vital link. That's sort of like the wind through the trees.
Well, and I like the posterity of it. The legacy that can be there. Had we started this back in the day, what a great thing to have had an interview like this with Bruce, with James, with even Alex, Peter, something. And we have those. There are videos, there are mementos of that, and, candid moments of time recreating typically, but not the conversations in this sense, where it's a focused time dedicated to talking about our life in the human forest, and I think Bruce would have just loved it. It would have been a great conversation to have recorded for someone else to benefit from and listen to, and in his own words,
Absolutely. all those late night conversations about the difference between single end and double end 10x with Peter. I mean, like I understand it to this day because of those conversations, and just Bruce's stories about almost everything, and just his like most people don't realize Bruce was a professional wrestler for a while. Those stories were funny. It's like when you meet this guy in the tree job or on a training course and something, and it's like he seems kind of like a professional wrestler. Well, that's because he was. It's like it's fascinating. When we get Thor on the show a little later, I have a great story about the first time I met Thor. It's pretty
Thor's looking forward to it, so I'm looking forward to his interview as well.
But I want to tell it when he's here.
Yeah, and I'm going to keep digging through the wood pile to find some more remnants of our forest, right? And most of them, all of them obviously are still standing, and they're still contributing in their own way, and in fact, all of them are still in the industry. They're still connected in some way. It's one of those weird industries. It's like that. And Stanley's another one. His the history of like how splicing got involved into arboriculture. Man, like wow, it's an interesting. He's got a lot of like real good information there, and. Yeah, so it's an honor to be able to facilitate that, and and what else is the fact that people are willing, willing to give some time from their valuable resource of time to share and take time to do this and talk. That is to me the most amazing part of all. It's like what a gift to give, and the fact that they're willing to, I guess, there's enough of a relationship and a desire there to want to help. They still have that heart of a teacher that they want to share and give back. And, that's what ultimately, I think one of the many things that all true instructor teachers have in common that stay involved in really in any form of education, but certainly in the business of arboriculture. You got to love the trees and the tree people to teach arboriculture stuff for long periods of time, like you and I have. There's got to be a love of both. And Bruce said it best. Right. I love trees and tree people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think I look forward to. I haven't talked to some of these guys in decades, and it'd be interesting because they have a different perspective, because I never left, right? Like I stayed full on in it. But you always have a different perspective on something that you were full on in, and then you step away from it for a little bit, and then you look back into it, or you stay kind of on the periphery. And it's a perspective from the outside looking in would be, I look forward to that, because I can't have that. I've always been on the inside for a lot of this. It's hard for me. I can only see from the inside looking out. So, and just to reconnect with them, because there's just some funny things we've done, and just interesting stuff it's been around, and it's nice to revisit that. And there's lessons to be learned there, I think, but I think that the people that we have on the podcast will learn lessons as well too, because like I said, they still have that heart of a teacher. And one of the reasons we all teach is because we love to learn. And just by revisiting these things, I think you can kind of revisit some of those lessons and then see them again through a lens of 15, 20 years more, which is a different lens. It's in some ways it's clearer, when you're away from it and you're not stuck in the middle of it. And then to see how the industry's changed so much from a training standpoint. No, when we started doing this, Dwayne, like YouTube wasn't a problem. It's like now I battle the YouTube training crew almost constantly. Well, why would you think, you ask, like, they're doing something, relatively unsafe, misconfiguration. Like, why would you think you could do that? Oh, I saw it on YouTube. It's like, oh, geez. I never heard that, until 10 years ago. So there's like a silent,
not just on your courses, not just before, but during.
Interesting.
I've had it happen where, like, the phone is actually your facts are being Google checked, or what you're saying while you teach. So you could be confronted or challenged minutes after speaking something because, well, it says here that Where did you get what? What's that? Oh yeah, and sometimes it's like, oh yeah, well I know that guy. Okay, here we go. And I think for some people it's like, wow, holy crap, he actually knows the guy.
Yeah.
And for some people it's like, oh yeah, he knows the guy. So you're so much of it at that point comes down to the attitude in the first place. That's something that's probably the most difficult thing to try to contend with or work. I always used to say you can't teach people to care. You can't educate someone you can't educate inspiration, and you can't train professionalism in it. You can model it at best, right? You can model it and inspire for sure through your actions. But if someone, it's the old saying, those who have ears, let them hear, right? And I know there's a Harv Eker would talk about this, the millionaire mind guy. And the secrets of the millionaire mind guy. And he said there wasn't just the right person, right place. Or what's that saying? Right person, but there's right person, right place, right time. He added that to it. That's the first time I'd heard that. And I don't know if it was his coining that, but like there's more than two elements that have to come together in order for the magic to happen, as they say, And, there has to be a willingness too. There's to be a few factors that need to, and you could have the best, I think back to opportunities that existed that I wasn't able to see or ready to seize at that point in time.
Yeah, no, it's just that. And, it takes a unique personality to stick in arboriculture for a long time. And then it takes out of that unique set of personalities, it takes an even more unique person to want to actually do this training thing, on a consistent basis. When it's just the people that have gotten involved and have been involved in the past are always very interesting, have a very good viewpoint. And many of them, if not all of them, good business owners, good business leaders, and trainers are still that way. Even a lot of the new trainers now are running their own businesses and stuff. And think about, somebody like some of the past instructors, just the straight up business advice they could give somebody, and I see this podcast as being a way to kind of spread that out a little bit too, right? Cause they're in the same boat. I remember before I got exposed to, Ken and Rip and the whole Arbor Master thing, and just, working in Lancaster County with my brother. And I was fortunate. I had good, instructors, I had good mentors, but I was in a bubble. I didn't realize what the rest of the world was doing. And then when it started to expose that, it was eye opening. And, there's a lot of arborists out there that don't get that. And there's a lot of trainers that don't get that. They don't have that opportunity to say, what they think that they're going to start whatever, and like, I'm going to be a trainer for Arborcanada and I'm all on my own. It's like, I'm the first person doing this. Like, nope. I've been doing it for quite a while. You're out there. It's like exactly like you said, somebody Googles a fact you said, and you're basically getting heckled by somebody that's not even in the course. Like, yeah, we've been through that. Yeah. I got to call. Yeah. We know what that's like, so, and sharing those stories and reconnecting. And I hope that through this podcast, some of those old voices and old faces can be more familiar. Not only for us, but for them. And this podcast is a way for them to do that. We have no rules. Just because
and I love the old saying of you die twice, once when you physically die, and again when your name's spoken for the last time. And you bring up Arbor Master from the past, and it's still there. Arbor Master isn't gone by any means. But I'd like that to be a thing too. Is it's, and then really the whole concept of which we have built our career on really began with that model that and quite frankly, Arbor Master didn't even really coin it. Its origins of their model that go back further to the game of logging, which you got to go all the way back to Soren Eriksson, and I don't know if Soren's still alive or not. But well, what a fascinating interview that would be. To talk to him. I think he might be. He did. Yeah. Okay. But that just reminded me. Ron Hartel. I spoke with him just last year, about a year ago. I went and had a visit with him, and I think he would be tickled pink.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It might be a challenge getting them to log on or something. I'd have to go do that one in person just from technological standpoint, but you never know. That's one I made. Well, he's not there. He's in Canada
Okay.
now, like, because he's
Okay, I'll
married to a
travel to
Canadian, right?
Australia.
Yeah,
I'm
he
down with
lives
that.
in BC,
Let's
lives
go.
near DJ. He only
Oh, is he
lives
in
like
Canada?
maybe a half an hour from DJ right now.
No. Okay.
So that's DJ could go.
Okay. I'll go there.
Get him hooked up. That's there you go. But, you know, and I love that. Like all the names, all the connections, and like digging back into those archives of. It's like digging through the layers of the forest floor, you know. It's all there, and it's all made of what it is today. And yeah, I'm excited for it too. I think it's going to be fun. You know, and I guess as they say, as long as you enjoy what you're doing, then other people might enjoy it with you, right? So
yeah, I think
as long as we're having fun, I think that's the main thing, Tony. And you know, who's this going to help? Well, but if it just helps us or it keeps us happy, that's good enough for me at this stage of my life.
All right. Well, I've always kind of figured with creative pursuits like this, if you create what you'd like to see in the world, then you've entertained yourself, and the rest is just icing on the cake, right? Like if somebody else,
you know, and it's nice to be in a situation where it's not, you know, a matter of livelihood, or you know, we're not in that situation where hopefully this works, or you know, we're going to have to figure out how to pay for the investment. You know, it's not like that. It has a real altruistic tone to it, or flavor, you know, that I think that has a certain charm or a certain attraction, right? This isn't about trying to get enough hits that we can monetize. You know, it's not the objective. The objective truly is to share information and knowledge and help people improve and inspire and get them to think and just be better contributors to the human forest.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think all of the instructors that have been involved with Arborcanada current and through the past have had that. It's like, yeah, I mean, you have to get paid for your time. You should be paid for your time and talents, but it's never been about making money, right? You know, I mean, unfortunately, the society and the culture we live in, you have to have money to grease the wheels. But, you know, I know it was always the hardest thing for people to understand, you know, that you go out training, like, oh man, it's like, they would sort of infer that, man, you must be making money hand over fist. Like, nah, dude, I'm doing all right. I'm paying the bills, but I could make way more money staying at home doing tree work, you know, and not have to travel and sleep in my own bed at night and not have to eat in restaurants every night by myself, you know, and I'm not saying that it was that bad of a life. But you did it out of a sense of altruism and because you wanted to help. And it takes, like I said, it takes a unique person to do the work. And then it takes a unique person that's willing to give that part of themselves too, you know, spend that amount of time away from family and to help out. And you're right. Yes. You know, we get, like I said, nice thing about this medium and this podcast is we don't have those worries anymore. You know, it's like, it's low overhead. You know, it's not costing us that much to, you know, to do this. And then but we can still, it's still in the spirit of going out there and teaching somebody to use a chainsaw, because there's a lot of lessons to be learned. And I think, and then, you know, maybe what Norm's dad was saying is maybe that's that mystical changeover. For the longest time, I was teaching people how to run chainsaws. Now I realize that I'm teaching people how to run chainsaws and live a good life. You know, like a lot of those lessons are very much intertwined, and they're the same lessons. You know, like how you do anything is how you do everything, and that little mantra that we got from Trainer has so much more power now. You know, 3 decades in, because it's so true. It's just so true, right? And it'd be interesting to reconnect the old with the new. And, you know, our intent is, you know, as this starts out, it'll be just for Arborcanada.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought that to the light, you know, in the conception of this, and
fine.
You know, hey, maybe it becomes interesting enough and valuable enough or people value it enough that they want to share it, and that, you know, which is great. And so if we, you know, Nance was saying, she said, well, because I was going to use Arborcanada in there somewhere, and she said, that's great, you know, and then I had the Arbor Canadians, which I've kind of coined whenever I talk about our instructors, you know, and share stuff on Arborcanada's social stuff, that the Arbor Canadians are doing something somewhere. You know, you've been called an Arbor Canadian, even though you're not Canadian, but you're part of the Arborcanada team, therefore you're an Arbor Canadian. But, some people could feel precluded, from that because they're not Canadian. So but it is, people that are connected with the Arbor Canadian team or the Arbor Canada team. So, but as forests go, it's not just one species that connects with another. They've learned, right? It's interspecies. So maybe Canadians and Americans can connect, and Europeans and all the rest, which we clearly know doesn't. Of course, does happen. So, as beautiful of an example as the natural forest is, the human forest has certain advantages and isn't under the same restrictions as the urban or natural forest is. We can transcend that and take the example, which I believe is probably the most powerful example of community and how to live together that exists. I'm starting to have this weird old guy thinking around the fact that's one of the primary purposes of the forest, to show us how to live together. And, as this planet grows and grows and the population increases, if forests accommodate, they figure it out. Like the forest would never grow to such a state that they'd shade each other out and die. It just wouldn't happen. And, there's got to be a lesson in there somewhere. But anyways, that's getting a little down in the weeds, but.
Yeah, but I think, like I said, the analogies are numerous, and you can take it to any level you want. On the very surface level, it's just a bunch of stories about bunch of tree people that have been doing this work forever, and the silly things we get into. And on a deeper level, it's a blueprint for how we've moved through this world. Not that am I an expert by any means, but I've been down the road as you've been down the road, and so there's lessons to be learned there, looking back for other people that haven't been down that road. And it's always good to share, and it's a wonderful platform for it. And, it's, pound for pound, a tree that has fallen over and is decomposing on the forest floor, pound for pound, probably is more alive than a tree that's upright and growing. So it pays to look back and to see where you came from and to see what you're standing on. And then also,
I know it's such
and see the sunlight.
Great analogy, and I'm certainly, we're not, the state or, we don't have a monopoly on the concept. It's been, I think, batted around and conceptualized by people for decades, for millennia. I go back to my times with Jack Phillips, and who I met through Dr. Shigo. And, he became a consulting arborist in a weird roundabout way, but he spent most of his career as a anthropologist, teaching religious philosophy and history and human history around religions. And he became a consulting arborist, and he would continually draw parallels to, the origins of religion around the planet and globe, and how trees in every single one play a role and are connected. And there's a symbolism to a tree in every ancient religion that has ever existed. And I was just fascinated by that, and that's why him and Shigo, Jack and Alex were working on writing a book at the time. They weren't finished the book. Unfortunately, Alex passed away before they had completed it. But it was the first co-authorship that Shigo was involved with, was him and Jack. And Jack did complete the booklet, I suppose it is, but they had started it. So it's not all, and Jack didn't really elaborate to the degree that they had intended to go, because, he just didn't feel that was appropriate. But I do think that Marilyn has copies. I had a copy. I was going to show it to you. I was going to show it to everybody, actually. And it's in my office there when we were meeting in the basement at Climber Riser. I wanted to break that out with the pithy points, but it's called The Soul of a Tree. And that's what their intention wasn't to, it was a play on words. And it wasn't that to suggest that trees are sentient and, part of the spiritual realm, but it wasn't an intent to not suggest that. But what the book was about their intention was to draw understanding and parallel to the fact of what is it about trees that people dig. And that's where the term soul came in. You know, Jack would reference it like, have you ever heard of soul food or soul music or comfort food, right? Something that somehow touches you in a different way, you know, because we all have that. Like you smell an apple pie or something cooking that reminds you of home and of a very pleasant time period, right? That's soul food. And you eat that food and it comforts you. Or you listen to a song and it's like you go somewhere. And trees do that for people. So they were attempting to try to illustrate what it is about trees that makes people feel that way. Hence, what gives trees soul or rhythm or comfort. And because it's quite universal in cultures, society. Like it doesn't matter what language you speak. People like being in the forest. You know, we know now that there's actual chemicals released in the forest that calm us. Like there's actual chemical physiological reasons for it, let alone spiritual, mystical, meditative, whatever you want to call it. So, right down to how, what is it about a fire? Jack and I would talk a lot about that, the releasing of sunfire, allowing us to basically almost touch the sun, but don't get too close because even a campfire is going to burn your ass if you're not careful, right? And anyone's melted a pair of tennis shoes or wet socks you're trying to dry after a hike, and my gosh, they're shot because they were a little too close to the sun. And what a unique thing that trees bring us,
Yeah, right. Now, maybe in our own way through this podcast, we can kind of start to access some of that through the stories and the traditions and all the way that we've gone about it and see where it goes from there.